Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
The truth shall set you free.
You can't handle the truth.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
That's not how the Force works.
I'm gonna make him an offer, Captain.
I'd buy that for $1.
Hasta la vista, baby.
This woman has to be gotten to a hospital.
Hospital? What is it?
It's a big building with patients. That's not important right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Hello and welcome to the Creative Control Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Akbala, and thank you for joining us for episode 13. This week we're going to be discussing Black Panther and what's next for this hero in the MCU. Joining me for today's show, we've got from the Creative Control team, we have Neil, Sal, I remembered you this time, Alex, and also a big welcome to a first-time guest to Creative Control Podcast, but you may be familiar from him from Zito's gang. He's Greg Marshall. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So today's episode, as I say, is all about Black Panther and what we should do with the character in the upcoming sequel. So directed by Ryan Coogler, the first Black Panther was released in 2018 and became the fifth Marvel film in the cinematic universe to get 1 billion worldwide. It was actually the first not to star Robert Downey Jr., the first four being Avengers, Iron Man 3, Age of Ultron, and Civil War. And also Black Panther is the first movie in the MCU to have its opening weekend box office surpass its production costs. So it did over 200 million in its opening weekend. Obviously, it starred Chadwick Boseman, and the film was a huge critical success, and characters appeared in Infinity War and Endgame. Obviously, sadly, Chadwick Boseman passed away in August 2020 after a battle with cancer, which was a huge shock to everyone, kept that completely under wraps. Even Marvel, top brass didn't know about it. But following this was a lot of debate if the character would be recast, and really split opinion. However, in December 2020, Kevin Feige confirmed they would not be recasting the character. And he went on to say that Chadwick Boseman's portrayal of T'Challa as Black Panther is iconic. It transcends any iteration of the character in any other medium from Marvel's past. And it's for that reason that we will not recast the character. However, to honor the legacy Chad helped us build through his portrayal of the King of Wakanda, we want to continue to explore the world of Wakanda and all its rich and varied characters introduced in the first film. Ryan Coogler is hard at work on the sequel now and bringing it to theaters in July 8th, 2022. And just literally this week, as of March 2021, Lupita Nyong'o said that it's going to be different, of course, without our king to, our king to go back into that world. But I know that all of us are dedicated to reimagining or carry on his legacy in a new Black Panther. Ryan Coogler has really, really exciting ideas. So it's very much a case of, I think there was pretty much a story that they had in mind, and they are just trying to fit it now with having either a new Black Panther or a new central character. It's all about how they're going to handle that. So, I think we've discussed on previous podcasts on Zito's gang about what our preferences would be, but kind of that decision is made. But just as a go in, just I'd like to, from each of you, just kind of say, would you have recast or would you have not? What would have been your first creative control decision?
No recast.
Same here. Yeah, no, move it forward.
Totally agree. No recast.
All right, so it's just Sasha that wanted to recast.
I think so. Yeah.
Even though he's not here, I would have to say that I can understand very much the reasoning behind the recast, because let's face it, we were literally just getting started with the character of T'Challa, and obviously T'Challa was more than just simply the Black Panther. So that it's, you think there's so much that could have gone on with that character that now we're not really going to see, and because we're we're not set up, I say, because we are comfortable with that character based solely off Black Panther 1. Now seeing any other character doing that, it is gonna kind of, for the people who weren't like, oh, I know who Chadwick Boseman is, or I'm heavily invested in the MCU. The casual person, they're gonna be like, wait, where's the dude? Yeah.
No, I agree, and I think there's definitely comic book fans and even movie fans, they'll feel that there's a lot of stories of T'Challa that are yet to be told. And obviously originally there was talk about Storm coming into the MCU via Black Panther, which would have been key with T'Challa. that maybe not is the case anymore. But there's very much, I understand that feeling. And I think we saw enough of Chadwick in the role that he cemented it for himself. I think if we just had the Black Panther film and it was just a one-off, we would have probably felt quite different about it. But because he was introduced in Civil War, had his movie, was in Endgame, was in Infinity War, you know, we saw him, you know, in different parts of the MCU. I'm more okay with that being that. And again, I would have felt sad if they'd actually moved it on to somebody else. And let's be honest, that would have been some big shoes to fill, you know, for somebody to come in and try and take over that character.
If they
who would want that? Who would want that job? That's the thing. Who would
social media backlash? I mean, if you haven't got it right, then
it's not social media backlash. It's like trying to do Joker again after Heath Ledger. You know, I mean, we got Jared Leto trying to do it. Yeah, well,
that's the thing. I think if they were going to recast it, though, they would have to, just for shits and giggles and to take it full circle, they'd have to bring Terence Howard in to play the role, just to have.
Yeah, the difference is Jared Leto.
Rhodey, put him back into the MCU, just to put middle finger at everyone.
Yeah, and the difference is with something like Jared Leto is it's a different version. You know, so you're on board. You'd have to almost do a Chadwick Boseman impression. You can't necessarily make it your own, otherwise it's too far removed from that character.
I mean, we got Phoenix doing it a year later, or, 2 years later, and everybody bought that one, and everybody loved that one, and nobody thinks about Heath Ledger at all because it is so different.
I think what it is, though, is, and this is obviously just my personal opinion on things, I think what it is there is, for one, you know, we as an audience, movie-going audience, we tend to give people leeway if we know they're not playing the same role. Like it's, you know, but there's also other things. It depends on the kind of the basically how often you see the character. So you look at Iron Man 1 to Iron Man 2. Don Cheadle, you know, if you think of Rhodey, you tell anybody now, you know, 12 years deep, and you say, who's War Machine? And people who know actors and whatnot, they're gonna say, you know, Don Cheadle. But then it's like you go all the way back and you remember, yeah, but it was Terence Howard. But how memorable is Terence Howard in the role? Terence Howard, he's, you know, the mate who doesn't do anything.
Yeah, he's solid in it, but he's very much a background. He's a
brilliant actor, but it's like when you look at the role of Rhodey, Iron Man 1's Rhodey is nothing in comparison to Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3, in compared to even his small cameo roles like Age of Ultron, or, you know, when you actually see him in bigger roles, you know, Civil War, it's the, you know, it's like characters come into it. But I think with someone like, say, Joker, and this is what I've noticed a lot, mainly with Joker as a character, is to follow on from something great. You're always on an uphill battle. Following on from something not so great, it's a lot easier. You know, it's like when we look at things like, you know, Heath Ledger's Joker, there's no way in hell you can deny that was just inch perfect iconic role. But it's an inch perfect iconic role. That said, it did come after, you know, after we saw you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger is Mr. Freeze. We saw, you know, Poison Ivy. We've had so many other villains get to that point. If it literally was 89 Batman, Dark Knight, there'll be a I personally feel
a much harder comparison.
A big different reaction to it. And then obviously when we saw Jared Leto, a lot of people were just not feeling it.
No, I think that was more the look of the character and stuff like that. But then also we've got the fact that, you know, the Bruce Banner was recast, because that Hulk movie, you can kind of take it or leave it with part of the MCU. It doesn't have a huge amount of impact rather than the end credit scene. And the main character, though, is the Hulk. from that movie, and that's what you take away from it rather than actually bannering that. So but that moved on. But I think because of the amount we've seen Black Panther, I think recasting would have felt different. So okay, so now we've moved past that. We're going to have a new Black Panther. Is it even going to be Black Panther 2? Is it going to be Wakanda, legacy of the Black Panther, or what do we think is going to happen in the sequel? Because there's been a lot of talk about passing of the mantle, and there's been a lot of talk about his sister Shuri taking on the mantle of Black Panther. But again, this is still up for debate. So I've been watching, some different interviews and videos of how people feel about that. And the way that I kind of see it is Shuri inherits it begrudgingly, because, her brother passes at the beginning, and it's a responsibility she's given, which she isn't actually ready for. And she's struggling to be a queen, to try and mature, because she's very jovial in the other movies and stuff like that. And, it's a huge thing to take on, but there's also going to be the battle for the crown. Are the other, tribes going to be coming back and wanting trial, by combat, not trial by combat, but, combat for the throne. And, is it just an inheritance thing, or actually does she need to prove it? So I think for me, it's a case of, I think there should be a passing of it, because like T'Challa, when his father died, it was passed to him, because the way they set it up in the movies, it's like a royal lineage. But then if anyone wants to challenge, they can. But I think before that challenge comes, there's a greater threat, which everyone then puts that aside. And then she'll prove herself through that bigger threat to the movie. But then everybody at the end will say, I'll bend the knee kind of thing, I'm not going to challenge. So that's kind of how I see the Black Panther 2 mantle passing on. What are you guys' thoughts?
That's way better than what I thought.
Mine's very easy. Mine's identical, pretty much. That's how I see it. I've got obviously sort of plot points to get us there, but it's almost the same thing. When Mark might go for it again this time, but then put aside the differences for the Stone for Wakanda, and then I literally have written in my head the same plot point for that. So that's quick and easy.
Nice. So, what do you think?
Okay.
Well, mine's a little different. I've been reading a lot of the fact that Kevin Feige was saying that they wanted to look into the past of Wakanda and like the previous generation or something. And I thought it could be a good idea that instead of bringing in, what's the sister's name again?
Shuri.
Yeah, Shuri from the beginning and trying to take over the mantle, or at least being passed the mantle, that we look into the history and then bring it to by the end of the movie, you bring it to the present, and then give her the mantle at the end, and allow people to create a bridge between Boseman's character, what it was before, then, and what should it be, sort of a thing. Or, the thing is, really, we all know it, they're not really copying the comic books, word by word. They are going to change it. They could essentially do that. They can bring somebody else in if they like. But the thing is, as long as they give that particular pivot where they acknowledge Boseman and his work, and then on to the next one, that particular part has to be there. They could either do it the first 20, 30 minutes of the flick, or it can be the flick.
Yeah.
And they can it's kind of use it as a joint between other stories as well.
It's kind of more of a transition.
Exactly, have a transition, but also not only that, because they were planning to bring in new characters, they can use that as they can technically use the whole thing as a junction between past, present, and future, and also a junction between other characters coming into the MCU.
Okay, Alex,
it all depends. You don't want to do it, make it too busy.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Alex, what are your thoughts on that? Shuri, Black Panther, do you see that happening?
Yeah, I had sort of two kind of thoughts. Yeah, one basically pretty much what you said, Ken, and sort of nailed on the head. I think I'm sure in Black Panther 1, although obviously the crown is passed on, it sounded like it was the Black Panther mantle, not necessarily linked to the royal lineage. So my other thought was, obviously, if the death of T'Challa in it, Shuri would sort of take on a role and mantle queen. I've now got to be queen, and that's obviously going to be its own sort of responsibility and have to deal with that. So Okoye, the sort of like the lead of the warriors, could potentially then be take on the mantle of Black Panther instead. So you've got the two sort of like side by side, one as the Queen and one sort of taking the role as Black Panther.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think
like a caretaker,
but I think in the comics, it wasn't a lineage. The mantle of Black Panther wasn't a lineage to the crown.
Yeah, it's not.
They did that as part of the movie world.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was just coincidental that obviously he is Prince and then happens to be
because the king was the Black Panther as well, right? But when it came up to the challenge, they were challenging not only as ruler but the mantle. So they very much in the movies tied that together. Now they could, in theory, split it, and have that separate. But I think in the movie world, they've kind of tied that together. Neil, am I on the right path there?
You are, because what it is we have to remember that T'Challa is the Black Panther when his father is king.
Yeah.
He becomes, but what it is they strip, their whole thing is, we strip the power of the Black Panther away from you so you have a fair fight with someone to become king or not king. It's like they are essentially two separate people, because there have been times when the Black Panther has not been the king of Wakanda or the ruler of Wakanda, because the Black Panther is just solely the protector of Wakanda.
Yeah.
Okay. It just so happens that through a certain period of time, it became the ruler became the Black Panther, and then it just stuck.
Okay. So from that point of view, it may be that Shuri has to take on becoming queen, but then actually the mantle of Black Panther is up for grabs, and you have this power struggle with people trying to claim that mantle. I guess the fact that there's a couple of things there. So one, let's talk about Michael B. Jordan returning as Eric Killmonger as well. Now, there's a couple of things. It could just be as a flashback sequence, or it could be something that's very small to the movie. However, there is a history there where, yes, at the end he said, I'd rather be like, dropped off in the sea rather than being like a burial in my land kind of thing, because he stuck to his principles. And a lot of people said, I want to see Killmonger as Black Panther. I'm like, well, his story arc didn't change. He didn't change the way he felt about the way he was going to rule. So why would he then come back and do that? However, if it was part of a power struggle, you could bring him back. If you remember the end of Civil War, I think I'm correct in this, they put Winter Soldier on ice whilst they were trying to develop a cure. And it could be very much as Killmonger's might have been sitting on ice for a while. And because it's part of this struggle for leadership and he actually has a claim to the throne, maybe he's de-iced, maybe that's part of it as well. So there could be something there to bring him back into it as well. But the other point is Killmonger in the movie, he destroyed all the plants which gave the powers, right?
Yeah.
So from that point of view, unless there's one hidden somewhere, and maybe Shuri has to go on a search for that, which is part of the movie that plays out, whether it's a blood transfer or something happens at the beginning of the movie, the way T'Challa passes in the movie, hands that off. It's going to be interesting, because otherwise Killmonger actually still has that in his body, because he never had that taken away from him, even though he was kind of killed at the end of the movie. So that actually might play into it as well. How are they going to have? Is it just going to be purely the suit that gives you the power? Like she upgrades it? Yeah, exactly. So she could upgrade that. So how do they navigate that?
My thoughts with the Killmonger thing is because I've considered this as part of like, where would I go? I loved Killmonger. I think he was played so well by Michael B. Jordan. I thought it'd be brilliant. There is precedent in the comics, but Marvel can't do it because of the one thing they still don't know right to is actually Killmonger does come back after dying in the comics because of the symbiote. But that's the one thing they don't have rights to. So symbiote Killmonger challenging the throne would have been absolutely amazing, but they can't do that. Putting him on ice just seemed a little bit lazy, as much as it would be a nice plot point to get him back in there. But unfortunately, I think he's done. But because anything else would just seem like really convenient writing. And it was shoehorned in because of the death of Chadwick Boseman. So,
but couldn't they use somebody else instead of symbiote? I mean, they could change it,
They could, but I think any world in which the character of Eric Killmonger, played by Michael B. Jordan, is returned to the land of the living by the Wakandans, it automatically tarnishes the legacy of T'Challa as a character, because remember the whole thing of, you know, Black Panther 1, really and truly, the core essence of the film is about making the right decisions. What happens when you make the wrong decision, right? And if by the end of that movie, knowing that his father made this one terrible decision and this is all the horror that it brought, why would T'Challa then make what could technically be another bad decision by, oh, even though you said to me to bury you at sea, I'm gonna completely disregard your personal feelings, and I'm just gonna stick you in the freezer, and then in the the event
that doesn't stick true to his character.
It doesn't stick true to his character. It takes T'Challa's honor away from him, and his whole thing was to be an honorable man. Because even when his dad says that line, he's like, you are a good man, and it's difficult for a good man to be a good king, and it's like,
unless there's a third party who took his body and did it, So,
but I think something like that. I think T'Challa would be he would strike me that T'Challa is the type of character that would make sure, that, okay, I'll make sure that his body is buried at sea or something, and we don't want to see what happened in like the second Transformers movie where, a bunch of people dive in and they, tap a little electricity and bring them back.
Yeah, well, talking about the sea, actually, the rumor is that the movie Black Panther 2 is going to central around Wakanda versus Atlantis.
Yeah,
and that is going to have the debut of Namor. Is it Namor?
Yeah, Namor.
Pronounce it. Yeah. So Namor, the Submariner, as the antagonist in this movie. So maybe when they go to bury his body down there, they've disturbed something. Who knows? But what do we think about that? Having obviously seen Aquaman and what that can kind of bring to the DCEU and how popular that was. Namor's never been mentioned in the movie world at all, except maybe there was a hint of it in Endgame where Captain Marvel was like, I'm dealing with an underwater earthquake.
Oh no, Okoye.
Yeah.
Okoye says there's an underwater
earthquake. So that was kind of a hint to potentially something happening there. Now maybe that is something that plays into that, and yeah, there's a thing with Atlantis. So how do we feel about Atlantis coming to the big screen with Namor?
I think I'm very 50-50 split. On one hand, if it happened, if that's what happened, I'd be like, oh, cool, I'm good with that. On the other hand, I feel like you have to be very careful with the introduction of the Submariner, simply because he is immediately, automatically going to be compared to Aquaman, and because at present moment Aquaman just happens to be Jason Momoa and is like literally a beacon of light. There are so many people who are just like, they don't see Aquaman, they see Jason Momoa. So whoever you cast, however he behaves, he's going to be basically, he's gonna either have to be, completely different than Momoa's Aquaman, which is fairly easy to do, or you're gonna have to just lean into it. And it's like, how do you do it? Which way do you do it? You're always going to get that comparison to Momoa's Aquaman, which is arguably one of the biggest non-Marvel entities in comic book movies right now.
What's the rest of your thoughts?
Immediately that as well, that you don't want to touch at any point while Jason Momoa is being godlike over on the other universe. But secondly, I've always found it awkward of how do you bridge the thing where one person's got, I mean, Namor has got, obviously he's one of the most intelligent people in the Marvel universe as well, one of the Illuminati and blah blah blah, but and maybe that's what they're trying to bring into it slowly, but it's a man whose power's all based around water, and then loads of people who live in the middle of Africa are going to go, well, we're not going to fight near the water then, because that's just stupid. So it's one of these things of it's going to be very contrived trying to have a thing where his water powers are going to be relevant against whoever the new Black Panther is. It's a case of it's going to be so contrived trying to make that work. I think Namor should have, like the Aquaman movie, should have more water-based foes to begin with, or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I personally, he's not one of the strongest of the Marvel characters. I'd avoid it for a while. I'd wait until you've exhausted a few better options and then maybe bring that in. So
they will also have to redo the introduction to Wakanda, where that image they bring in, like literally a town in the middle of Africa, because there's literally no water around it.
Well, don't forget the whole fight for the crown thing takes place at a waterfall. So.
True, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
But it's not
sneaking through the back door. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. He's basically like, oh, they have the little battle for hell, shit. Tying on to what you guys were saying about, how Shuri, becomes Queen and Black Panther. You could have it that you said that the not having her go through the same trials as T'Challa with the ceremony. You could have her there going through the trials, and before they even get somebody challenging, the waters rise and there is a massive flood in Wakanda. And why is the massive flood taking place? Because Neymar's here.
You could be looking at thinking, it's an opportunity to take over Wakanda. They're kingless, they're weak. I'm going to come in and take over.
It's going to be very hard to paint him as a hero later on in the MCU, though, once he's committed mass genocide and drowning a whole nation.
That depends. That depends on one thing. Because I remember, I'm sure in fact, I think some of you were on the podcast when we mentioned it, that Dr. Doom, there was a big thing that Dr. Doom was going to be the big bad of Black Panther 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the idea went around. I can't remember if I mentioned it or if I'd read it or whatever it was, but the idea could be that Dr. Doom plays Neymar and Atlantis off against Shuri and Wakanda.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically Neymar isn't the villain. He's just simply been manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
by
or protecting something. Yeah, exactly. So you can have a clash where it's just a difference of opinion, pretty much like Killmonger. You didn't disagree with Killmonger. It's pretty much just like, I see where you're going with that, but I'm supposed to be rooting for this guy. So and it's just so yeah, I definitely see that as a possibility. He doesn't have to go full on evil and be killing innocents and stuff like that. He feels like he's protecting his his world kind of thing. So, but yeah, how that kind of combines, maybe it is something to do with Storm. Maybe Storm comes in and messes it all up. But yeah, so Atlantis is a possibility, and like you said, Doctor Doom is the other rumor potentially for Black Panther 2. I really hope he's not central to this movie, and he needs to be the next big bad for the MCU. He needs to be Thanos. We need some justice for this character in terms of how big and powerful he can be. We touched on it in terms of the Fantastic Four, and I very much wanted Doctor Doom to be somebody who takes advantage of what happened in Sokovia in the MCU and be a leader of that, which he then turns into, what does he call his...
Latveria,
and he turns it into New Latveria, and he becomes the leader of that, and kind of generates it from there because of all the devastation that Sokovia's caused. And maybe that could lead to Scarlet Witch, because she's kind of on that verge, good bad side. We can manipulate her pretty much like Ultron did, kind of stuff. So that's very much how I wanted to see Doom come in, but it depends on how low ground they're going to keep him or make him feel more worldly, and I'm fine with him being more local, because I think the next big Avengers battle doesn't have to include Guardians. It doesn't have to include all the universe. It can just be a little bit more low key, taking over the world kind of thing. Not that it's low key, but it doesn't have to be end of all times. But then also we've got multiverse coming, Doctor Strange, and what's going to happen there. So there's so many possibilities regarding that.
I think that's an interesting point, Ken, because I'm sure Kevin Feige knows exactly what he's doing, because he looks like he's known exactly what he's doing from like the womb. But I feel like because of Endgame, because of that iconic moment that will never, ever, 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 ever be topped, as long as they're making superhero films, there's never going to be a moment better than, everyone coming through those portals, Avengers Assemble. That moment will never be beaten. And I think because everyone's expectation is now up here, everyone's expecting that the next time we have a movie called The Avengers and everybody's together, we have to have that moment. Where in reality, what should probably happen is the next time there is a big bad and everyone needs to come together, it just needs to be someone who is a human, plain and simple human. Maybe they've got powers, maybe they're just really smart, but just be a human, a person, you know, that like a bullet to the head could deal with you, but you are infinite in your mental capacity, or you have a lot of powers like a Doom. Because let's face it, Doom can't be arrested. He can never be arrested. He's a world leader. So as long as you have a situation like that where conventional rules don't apply, you can still get the gravitas that you got with something like a Thanos.
Yeah, and it's going to be a slow build, you know, and you know that end game took 10 years to build, you know, and so we need to, you know, we need to dial it right back down again and start building these new Avengers up. Because if you think, you know, obviously we've lost Cap, we lost Iron Man, you know, Thor, the next Thor movie, that's going to be very much galactic because he's got Guardians of the Galaxy and all that kind of stuff in it. So Thor's going to be doing off his own thing. You know, how central is Captain Marvel going to be in the new Avengers? You know, is she just going to be like she was in the movies where she comes in when she needs to be? Otherwise, you're looking at what, like Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, if she can sort herself out. You've got Falcon, Winter Soldier. You know, it's a lot more lower key characters in terms of that group, and it's really going to be about an Ant-Man, so it's going to be about building those stories back up to generate their popularity again, so they have to come back as a team, because after Endgame, I imagine they're all pretty much going to be going off and doing their own things, and it is going to take that greater threat to bring them kind of back together. And you know, Black Panther, you know, is going to be a part of that, and you know, it would be nice to, you know, when we talked about female-led, you know, superhero movies, you know, Black Widow hasn't even come yet, but it's come far too late from what it should have been, and Captain Marvel got quite a bit of mixed reaction. You know, I think some people felt it was generic, some people actually didn't really like Brie Larson in the role, you know, which I think is quite harsh on her. I quite enjoyed the movie for what it was, but there's not a lot of love out there for Captain Marvel. So I think with what WandaVision has done with the introduction of, what's the new character?
Agatha Harkness, are you talking about?
No. I think she's kind of done.
Monica Rambeau.
Monica Rambeau.
Yeah.
That is her popularity is going to play very much into Captain Marvel, because she's going to be part of the Miss Marvel TV show.
Yeah.
And she's going to be in Captain Marvel too. So that's going to kind of lead into that. Black Panther, what about, you know, in terms of what moving forward, what we think, how involved Black Panther is going to be in the MCU, the fact that it is going to be maybe Shuri or somebody else. How do you see Black Panther fitting in with the Avengers? Do you think it's going to be something regular, or do you think we're going to actually see much fewer Avengers movies and more of the solo movies with other characters popping up?
I think it's going to be a thing of where she's basically going to be a very kind of similar thread to Tony Stark, where where she's going to be oh, by the way, this is the cat. The cat's name is T'Challa. Right. I think it's going to be a thing where she is kind of outfitting the Avengers bit by bit. Because if you think, you know, Cap's shield, vibranium, Winter Soldier's arm, vibranium, you know, and at the end of Black Panther 1, Wakanda basically opens its borders and says, you know what, we've been closed off enough. We've been closed off long enough. So let us, you know, we've been closed off long enough. So let us open our borders. We're going to show ourselves to the world. Shuri is, and I remember reading this, that Shuri was supposed to be the smartest person in the MCU. And that was before Tony Stark passed away. That she was supposed to be like the smartest person in the MCU. And, you know, there is that scene in Infinity War where, you know, she's talking with Bruce Banner about, oh, you know, like, oh, we did this and we did this. And she's like, why didn't you just do that?
Yeah. And the way she's trying to separate Vision from the stone and stuff like that as well. Yeah.
So I imagine I imagine that before, obviously, what happened with Chadwick, that there was probably some kind of idea that maybe she was going to be outfitting heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine now that may continue.
Mm-hmm.
It may be a bit more
Good
difficult,
shout.
a little bit less time on her hands being a ruler.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think that could probably be a good avenue to go down.
What do we think about Black Panther introducing any of the X-Men? Do we think that Storm is a possibility right now, or any other characters at all?
I think the Storm ship may have sailed a little bit because of the death of
I think I was
Chadwick
gonna
and
that.
T'Challa, because obviously they end up married and stuff like that. So again, it might seem like it's being shoehorned in there for the sake of it. So unfortunately, I think that's one of the avenues, that is just sort of died a little bit. So
yeah. I think the thing is, right, this is going to be, I don't know, it may be controversial, it may be not, because I read quite a bit of those comics in regards to Storm and Black Panther's relationship. It wasn't really done well. Like, we're not talking about, the great loves of comic books. This isn't Superman and Lois or Cyclops and Jean Grey, or, like Spider-Man, Reed and Sue, Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Right? This isn't one of them. This was kind of just basically just two characters who were from the same continent got shoehorned together.
Right. Okay. Could we have a same-sex relationship between Shuri and Storm? Is that a possibility?
I think that it is a possibility. Anything could be a possibility, but I think that would really be pushing out the boat, simply because you've got two characters who, in no iteration, have been have been gay, and you're gonna just be like, all right, no, the two of you together, and it will feel like you're solely doing that so you can still have a Black Panther Storm relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It also might be accused of being sort of like the ultra woke move to try to make everything sort of very modernist, and there'll be a lot of people who get very annoyed at the idea of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm all for, I think I'm glad as Ken said, it took a long time for them to finally give Black Widow her own solo thing. I'm glad they have, ironically after they'd killed her off, but so I'm glad they have. And there's some amazing female empowerment moments, like in Infinity War, the bit where they're kicking Proxima Midnight's ass is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And in Endgame, as much as that last scene is absolutely brilliant, that bit where all the girls get together for this forced tableau was just a little cringy, because it's just
It felt a little forced, didn't it?
It was very, very forced, and that's the problem. Marvel's manages to be very good with female empowerment and pushing. It was one of the most important superhero movies, was almost predominantly black cast, so absolutely amazing. They've got to make sure that they don't undo their good work and kind of shove things down your throat for the sake of it. So I think a gay relationship in the MCU would be amazing. I think that doing it for the sake of just having Storm with a iteration of Black Panther is, again, I think the ship sailed. So
I think it would be nice to see in the MCU, and I think that they had Iceman of the X-Men become gay in the comics, and I think seeing a male gay character will have a bigger impact on screen than it would with a female, because I think with a female it might feel it is playing a little bit more safe, because people are more acceptable potentially of seeing two women kiss on screen than they would two men kiss on screen, and showing those kind of emotions and stuff like that. So that would probably be Marvel's biggest challenge, and whether they'll go for it, who knows. But Alex, do you see any way of getting the X-Men into Black Panther, or do you agree? Do you think like Storm and that's kind of
I don't know, to be honest. part of the reason I didn't jump into the how to introduce the X-Men into the MCU was because I don't know how they go about it. I'm not too in depth in a lot of the Marvel comics, but certain stuff and from the cartoons, I love the idea of like Cap and Wolverine have a history in World War II, which you kind of can't do unless maybe you do some sort of multiverse thing. I don't know. So I don't know. For me, it was more going back to the Doom thing. I thought maybe the Fantastic Four is potentially a way in through Black Panther. You know, going back off our previous podcast about Fantastic Four, the idea you already brought up of, well, if Doom has kind of amalgamated a bunch of countries, you know, after the snap and all that kind of stuff, including Sokovia, does he make a play for Wakanda? Maybe he's got, I kind of thought, you know, I don't know, do you have Doom? Maybe he's already got his armor, and is that maybe vibranium? Has he had sort of like dealings with, say, Andy Serkis's Claw in the past, and so he's aware that there's more reserves in there. So when the death of T'Challa happens, now whether that's completely separate or Doom has some sort of, you know, role to play in that, he thinks, same as, you know, what someone else mentioned, you know, oh, they're vulnerable, there's vibranium reserves there, let's make a play.
That's a really good shout, because they spoke about opening their borders, right? And so maybe vibranium's become higher on the trade, and maybe he's, you know, being that business guy, setting up for fake companies to buy vibranium in loads of different fashions to weaponize it. And maybe that's something that he does. So that's a really interesting thing.
You know, I just thought, with all the technology you've seen in Wakanda as well, you know, it's like, well, is that a way for Doom to get sort of technology to get him and a team up into space to be hit by cosmic rays? Who knows? You know, I just think, I think, you know, as opposed to X-Men or Namor, I think Doom, for me personally, would make more sense. And as you say, it doesn't have to be that he's kind of like the big bad of the movie, but you're just sort of like planting those seeds so that he can start to pop up elsewhere in the MCU to build up to that sort of Thanos level, sort of, you know, big player in phase 4 or whatever it's going to end up being, phase 5, if it's even further down the road.
Yeah, Alex, you just unlocked something magical. I don't even realize it. Right? Because it just occurred to me, right? So the whole thing about vibranium is vibranium comes from space. It was a meteorite that crashed.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. Right? I remember that.
Holy smokes! You could literally have it that could be an introduction to Fantastic Four and Doom, of the thing of, you know what, vibranium came from space, and everybody's like, basically, you know, not everybody's scrambling to try and get the vibranium on Earth. You could have Doom, who's literally just like, well, look, I own a couple of countries, I am a billionaire, I'm just gonna go up to space and try and find out, get it from the source.
Maybe there's nothing
very Armageddon, the idea of drilling on a meteorite in space, what have you.
Yeah. Please just give
Bruce Willis in Black Panther 2.
Bruce Willis is Reed Richards.
It'd make a good thing, actually, because he just doesn't give a shit anymore. So he'd just make him look a bit, you know, sort of rock-like, and he'd be a grumpy fuck anyways.
I don't think he's given a shit in about 10 years, man.
No.
He's coming in everything.
10 years?
Everything. Well, okay, let's say
a short period of time.
He's literally in everything. And, I mean, a whole lot of shit, though. But, hey, as long as he's making money, I think it's okay.
I mean, I think when it comes to Black Panther 2, I think there's still a lot of talk going on, because I don't think Coogler's actually probably finished the script. I don't think they've actually nailed down exactly what's going to happen yet. I think one of his hardest challenges is going to be how he sends off, you know, T'Challa, Chadwick and the Black Panther, which has to be at the beginning of the movie. You know, whether do they use footage? Do they use CGI? Do they just have the suit and something happened to him in the suit? Is it completely off screen? You know, what would be acceptable to us in terms of what we want to see? Because as much as I don't want to see a CGI version of Chadwick, I wouldn't be opposed to him in the suit and a send off that way, whether it's like a royal send off of him in the suit or whatever it is like that. But is that doing a disservice to T'Challa, only seeing it as the Black Panther, like as a funeral kind of thing? How do we kind of feel about that playing out?
I think he should be in the suit. I think there should be the opening, like 10-15 minutes should be something. I've got an idea of who he should be against, but I'll get to that later on when we talk about villains and potential villains. But I think it should be him in the suit, and then something happens, and it's dealt with very dramatically. It's very sort of like reverential and endgame like and what have you. But yeah, I think if they tried to use footage of him or do as much as Marvel seems to be at the forefront of the de-aging and the stuff, that bringing someone back is a whole different sort of kettle of fish. And I think
well, go into that. Why did you have ideas for the villain?
Well, I mean, it all ties into the whole Shuri thing as well and what have you. I think, I mean, there's a lot of villains in Black Panther lore, and most of the big ones have been done. Killmonger, Ulysses Claw. Another big one, White Wolf, is just too similar to Killmonger. It's just someone who tries to take the mantle and wants to make it more militaristic. So it would just be like remaking the first. I had an idea, depending on what Winter Soldier and Falcon do with it, I think they should bring back Baron Zemo as part of a double act with another character to be sort of the main protagonist pulling the strings. And if he is at the death of T'Challa, it would make it very interesting in the sense that the whole of Civil War was him having already killed the father, and Black Panther dealing with it. Now Shuri has to deal with the fact that this person's killed both her father and her brother.
Nice.
And half of the struggle will be not wanting just to go full on sort of mental revenge on these stuff. So I think Baron Zemo would be a really good sort of behind the scenes protagonist. Along with another character called Zenzi, who's like a black female who can control emotions and stuff. I thought they could introduce him working for her for the CIA, trying to be part of the interrogation of Zemo, and he basically sort of recruits her somehow and uses her to do lots of shenanigans and stuff. But I think just Baron Zemo will add that whole sort of tie into the Civil War, to the father, the stuff. It would really make sure we go through the mantle of all the emotions.
That's a good shout, actually.
That's a really nice idea. I haven't heard that.
But it really depends what they do with him in Falcon and Winter Soldier, which has been shot. Is about to start airing. He could be dead by the end of that, and then we mute anyway. So
in 12 weeks, it could be all done. Exactly.
So we'll find out. Well, no, it's less than that. It's only it's 6 episodes, and it starts.
Oh yeah, it's only 6.
Friday. Obviously, at time of filming this, I don't know when it's going to be released. It could all be over. So I'll be saying this, and people listening are going to go, "Well, he's dead." So
I ain't got a clue.
Today's date is the 10th of March. People.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't get up in them comments talking nothing.
It begins Friday week, so and then it's 6 episodes, so it's going to be in 7 weeks and 2 days. It will be we'll know what happens to Zemo, but I think he'll be a good protagonist, and Zenzi's ability to control people's emotions as well as read emotions means she can basically turn any standard army into basically super soldiers, because you can basically push them to beyond their limits. They're basically just almost killing themselves to be elite soldiers. So
I could tie in well with Doctor Doom as well. If he could have just ordinary civilians, he actually has a superpowered army.
So which would be really cool. So I think Zenzi and Baron Zemo as a sort of a pair would be something different, and just do a completely different tale to the original one. As I said, a lot of the other characters would be very similar to Killmonger. So
guys, any other thoughts on Black Panther 2 before we kind of wrap this up?
I was just basically wanted to say something that we all talked about the fact that it opened the borders and everything, and I think we all are not discussing the fact that how much of impact it will make on everything else. Like we're talking about how they can connect things, I can introduce characters and so on and so forth. The thing is, if you think about all the previous Marvel movies, they were loosely connected to each other. I mean, like a scene or 2 scenes, essentially, to connect each other. And they can simply do that by introducing the fact that it's now open borders. The technology, forget Vibranium, like technology itself could bring in lots of different characters, or at least joining of a lot of different characters. Them introducing to new technologies, a new way of doing things, new research or whatever, new maybe heroes if they want, or villains and so on and so forth. The connection is quite easy to make simply because they are ahead of everybody.
I mean, that was kind of the thing, because Killmonger wanted to share it and he wanted to get it out there and weaponize it, but that was T'Challa's fear. But that's kind of the realization that people are going to take advantage of this, and then that can lead on something like the Weapon X program. Suddenly you've got this technology and vibranium and all this kind of stuff going on. They want to actually start weaponizing that, and they create the military program. So then you start having all these other divisions which start, bringing in that, and that's how we get our new Wolverine.
That's
I mean, thrown out shields, right? Now swords coming in, you
Mhm.
can have a lot of conflicts,
Mhm.
and conflicts will breed new stories.
If I can go back to a question that was asked earlier, which is, how do you think Black Panther will sort of, go into future MCU projects? I personally think, following on the idea that Shuri takes on the Black Panther and has to struggle through the movie with what that means and what have you, and also the role of Queen. I like the idea that maybe it starts with the partner of T'Challa. What's the I forget her name in the original
Nakia?
Yeah, Nakia. I like the idea that depending on the time frame, she's either pregnant or she's already had a son. So too young to take on the mantle, too young to be king. But I like the idea of Shuri taking it on, then at the end making the decision that she will stick with being the Black Panther, but cannot be Black Panther and Queen in all fair consciousness. Maybe passes the role on to either Okoye or M'Baku to act as regent for this young boy until he's old enough to take on the dual mantle of both Black Panther and King. So it would be a nice thing for the future. But mostly, and all of this is a complicated way of saying that I think Shuri is one of the best characters. She's funny, she's brilliantly well acted, and she is the natural stand-in for the chief armorer and technological person for Robert Downey Jr. I think she should take that role, and it's going to be very hard to say, yes, she's busy building armor for the new Spider-Man suit or the new this or the next War Machine iteration for Armor Wars, while also being Queen, while also being Black Panther. So I think giving one up, and I think, I want Black Panther in future Avengers things and stuff. So I think she should hand over the throne to M'Baku, who's proved himself, or Okoye, and say, look, act as regent for the son. I'll carry on doing MCU films and filling in the Iron Man genius playboy sort of role and what have you, and all is good.
Yeah, because otherwise you'd have to be in Wakanda full time, looking after it. So I really like that idea. That's really cool.
Well, how about the reverse? Like, be the queen, be everything, have a caretaker, Black Panther.
I thought about that, but then she's less likely to be in the MCU that way because as Queen, as you said, you have to kind of stay in Wakanda.
Yeah, but she is the head of technology, and like I was talking about over borders and the effect of that, she could be in charge of that as well.
I mean,
she could stay.
If not, I'll defer to Alex then, which I thought about, which is have Okoye as the next Black Panther, just because she's kick-ass as well. She's probably the second best character and stuff. So maybe.
I mean, unless the mantle is shared, maybe it's not one person.
Yeah.
So maybe because unless they have the physical powers that they take, and it is just a suit generated, and it's maybe they can have more than one, and it is actually shared. So
I think it'd be interesting if these are very minor, me pulling at threads, but one thing is that Okoye wouldn't turn to become the Black Panther because she's literally the general of the army of Wakanda. So if she became Black Panther, I imagine it would be a thing of where they would just say that she will no longer be the head of the Dora Milaje. And it's sort of like the way that they've established that Dora Milaje is sort of like it's a job for life. You decide to take on that role. That's your job for life. And I mean, there is certain things that were very, very, for the right reasons, left out of the film, such as the fact that the Dora Milaje, originally, they were created as, the reason that they're all women is because they were basically created to provide heirs for the kings of Wakanda. They were kind of like warrior concubines.
Yeah, so probably best they didn't touch on that in the film.
Yeah, if I want a concubine, I want a warrior concubine. I'm just
it was interesting what you said about it being about possibly M'Baku, because M'Baku, in the comics that I remember, I mean, it could be very different now, but I remember in the comics, both M'Baku and Okoye, I think her name is, the partner of Black Panther, both of them become villains.
Well, yeah, I mean, M'Baku is man-ape. He's literally one of the villains, but I think they've kind of touched on him being this villainous character, challenging him from the throne, refusing to be part of it, then coming back at the end. And I feel that they've got quite a nice character arc for him at the moment. I kind of like the idea of him going, do you know what? I can do what's best for the whole of Wakanda now, because then it would be quite a nice character arc.
Yeah, and plus I think the fact that we've had him fight in both the Infinity War battle and the Endgame battle, it takes the source out of him.
It'd be a slightly neutered villain, wouldn't he? As he's shown his good side now.
Yeah, no, if that would feel a little forced.
Yeah,
you'd have to have something major for him to turn. So I think we're kind of in agreement. What we kind of expect from Black Panther 2 is pretty much a remix of The Lion King. All right?
Yeah.
Somebody dies, not ready to take over, has to go away, figure themselves out, comes back, beats the big bad. Now they're in charge. So
essentially, yeah.
All right, cool.
Well,
we know Disney can do Lion King.
Yeah, Lion King is brilliant.
Twice. Animated, sequels, live action with CGI. Cool. Anything else you guys want to add about Black Panther 2?
Damn good.
Cool. All right, I think we figured it out. If not, Marvel, we've given you loads of tips and suggestions. And so just hit us up, and you can hit us up on our social medias, and you can follow me on Twitter at Kenan Talks Film. Alex?
Lex_Damon.
Sal?
Sal_F1 at Twitter.
Greg?
I've completely forgotten all my social media links, so I don't know. No.
It's appearing on screen at the moment. He'll send them to me and they're on screen. Neil, and yourself?
You can follow me at the Neil Coppin on Instagram. That's it.
And you can catch this episode on multiple platforms and all our previous episodes on YouTube if you want to see the video. Otherwise, you've got Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Stitcher, SoundCloud. We're everywhere, baby. So please make sure you subscribe to us on various channels, leave us feedback, give us some suggestions and ideas for future episodes. Let us know what you thought about this episode. You know, who would you have in Black Panther 2? What would you like to see happen? What villains do you want to see? What new heroes do you want to see? And that's it from us. So make sure you click like, subscribe. Thanks very much. And until next time, Wakanda forever.
Peace.